Wow, bro, you really did flop that one. Sup, everybody? This is Willie. And today, I'm gonna be talking about Dumb Ways to Die 2, which is a fun game that involves a lot of humor, which the deaths and fails are the biggest acumen to that. And because of it, it led to a lot of YouTube videos solely focusing on all the fails from the game because of how humorous and funny they are. Which in this video, I'm going to do something similar, but add a little bit of a twist where I'm going to be doing a top 10 ranking of my personal favorite Dumb Ways to Die 2 fails. Where I'll be ranking my top 10 fails and giving the reasons why I picked them. So with that, let's get into the ranking. Let's start off with ranking at number 10, where I shall say the list was pretty complicated when it comes to like a top 10 because I had a definitive / solid top 5 picks coming into this ranking, but the other 5 below were pretty hard for me to decide, so they may come off as random as they could. But anyways, the fail I'm gonna rank at number 10 is Treetop Monkey Race, where if you fail to have Loopy parkour from branch to branch to the top of the tree, supposedly the monkey will be angry at him as he falls down branch to branch. Which in general, fails that involve the characters falling out of frame are always the most funniest to me, so this one kind of qualifies in that category, but in just a less remarkable way, where I still think it's hilarious, and in some hilarious context, I always thought this minigame was not failable since I would just bounce once and I still be successful, but nope, it is. And glad they patched things up to make it more competitive than it was before. With that, I rank this fail at number 10. Now for number 9, and it probably feels like the most random pick I'm gonna make, but I have a level of enjoyment just from how it plays out, and so I'm gonna be ranking here Countdown Commuter, which is only a timed minigame where if you fail, the rocket will explode and the person inside will fly and crash into the window screen. Which that's pretty much it, which I think is pretty funny to see Loopy, who is the one that is pressing the button, not face any sort of repercussion, instead causing the person inside the rocket to face the consequences for the failure. And honestly, those moments where the character crashes into the screen is always so comical to me, and that's why I rank this fail at number 9. Ranking at number 8, it kind of breaks away from the usual standards of what I like from the visual of a fail, but this one I felt like the ridiculousness just felt right to include, so ranking at number 8 is gonna be Volatile Marshmallow Toasting, where Boffo is just toasting a marshmallow, and if he fails, the burnt marshmallow will explode all over his body, which that visual itself is just so ridiculous but also amusing at the same time. And I remember it so much, which is why I felt content to list it on the ranking here. So number 8 is a decent overall placement to put this at. Now for rank number 7, the fail I pick is probably one that the result of the fail doesn't seem as silly as it could have been, but I do think the comical nature of how it looks for the character, I do find more humor in it, and that is Torture Rack Yoga, which is the stretching game where if you fail to stretch Madcap wide enough, he's gonna have uneven limbs, which he sees some are too long and he's gonna have to like scoot around now, which I know is pretty baseline of a visual, but I do think the way it plays out with Madcap struggling to adapt with his new change, I do think there is some amusement I get from this, so this is where I rank this minigame at number 7. Now at ranking number 6, which I would say is the last of the more bottom tier picks of this ranking. So with that, at number 6, I'm picking Trampoline Trouble because I just found it overall silly how stupid somehow bounces out of the trampoline and lands headfirst on the surface, which from the screen that you see, she just bounces out of frame, but if you were to play this on an iPhone, which has a much wider ratio, you would see that she would just land on the ground and the animation would just pause right there, which from that visual is more or less humorous to me than if you were to fail this minigame on a more shorter ratio where she would just fall forward out of frame, which I think is more hilarious. But it is what it is, so with that, I would rank this minigame at number 6, and now we can get to the top 5, which I would say is the most solid picks I have for this ranking. And now for number 5, and this is where I start ranking fails that I would say have the best sequence that I just enjoy replaying, just for the sake of the amusement. They're pretty much what I would consider the best of the best. So for number 5, the one that is the bottom of that tier will have to be Don't Take That Seat, which is a train minigame, but I do think the sequence we see as we fail the task is really funny, where the whole point is to just not take the seat, and if Zany doesn't, then they'll be given candy from Phyllis, Or else, if Zany does take the seat, Phyllis will faceplant on the ground and use her cane to whack Zany in the face, which the scene just ends right there. But the moment where Zany gets whacked in the face, it did look like they were slowly recoiling back and possibly gonna fall out their seat, which is kinda a shame how short the scene played out. But if this scene were to be expanded a bit, I think it would be even more funny to see Zany fall out of the seat after getting whacked by Phyllis. But oh well, that's how it is. I still think it is pretty funny, even with how brief the sequence played out. So I ranked this train minigame at number 5. Now to rank for number 4, and this pick is one that is just all around so out of proportion how it plays out when you fail the minigame. However, the sequence itself is just so silly that I can't not include this on the list. So number 4 is going to be Dolphin Rodeo, which is a balancing minigame where you have to have Madcap ride on a dolphin or else he'll fall off, and a somewhat herd of dolphins will overwhelm him, which causes him to be submerged underwater. Which I think by that visual is just automatically hilarious to me. But the sequence itself plays really quick to where people sometimes think that he got eaten by a dolphin, which I'll slow-mo it here and show you that the dolphins didn't, and they just overwhelmed him, that caused him to sink below the ocean surface. And based on what the fandom Wikipedia presumes is that he would drown afterwards, which makes it even more tragic for some ridiculous thing that shouldn't have been. But anyways, I rank this fail at number 4. Now to number 3, and this top 3 here is the most solid picks that I have for fails from Dumb Ways to Die 2, where I just adore it so much that I would even purposely fail that minigame just to watch the fail sequence play out. The top 3 here pretty much reaches that pinnacle of the best fails of Dumb Ways to Die 2, in my opinion. So at number 3, I'm gonna go with Anvil Breaking, which the minigame involves Dumbbell trying to be tough and break a anvil with his head. But if he fails, his face is smashed on the anvil and he recoils and falls down in pain, which is definitely fitting to how any situation like that would happen. Which, to iterate, I have such fond for scenes where characters fall down, also fall out of frame, which I always think is very comical, and this fail scene fits in line with that. I'd feel so bad for Dumbo. As we see now, he gets a big mark on his face alongside other injuries on his face, which is pretty tragic. But I will say, it's also a sequence that felt very predictable because I think it was pretty telling how the fail was going to happen if we weren't successful. And that was indeed the case, which that factor does knock this down quite a bit in comparison to the next two. But overall, this was a very enjoyable fail, and I have this ranked at number 3. Now to rank at number 2. This fail is one that I always had at number 1 for a long time, but eventually at some point, when the game got updated later, a new minigame was able to overtake the spot at number 1, which caused the number 2 pick to be knocked down to this position. So at number 2, the fail I rank here is Javelin Catch, which I'll mention again, it held the reign as the best Dumb Ways to Die 2 fail for a bevy of time, and that stems from the fact that this minigame is one where you just have to avoid Boffo getting hit with a javelin, but if he does get hit by one, he'll be impaled and he'll slowly succumb to his wounds and just collapse like that. Which I found the overall sequence of it to be very humorous. Even though it's gory, I did like how comical Boffo looked when the javelin hit him. Which ironically, this fail is one that I always tried avoiding seeing because I really like Boffo as a character and I didn't want to see his fate from a javelin, especially how relieved he looked when you succeed the minigame. But when I eventually did fail this minigame, it was just all humor from my perspective of it. So yeah, that was some interesting context I wanted to provide. But overall, it was good, and that's why I rank it the second best fail in this game. So now for number 1. The best fail of all time from how I look at it, and considering I made an entire video dedicated to this fail, I think it's self-explanatory which one it is, and that is Rattleshake Mistake, where Stupa is just trying to shake a maraca. But if the player fails to do so, the maraca is actually a snake who then bites Stupa's eye that causes her to fall down. Which all of that is just so abnormal and just amusing by how all of it unfolds. Which the fact that some tiny little snake on her eye causes her to fall down just makes this 10 out of 10. Especially since Stupa is another one of my personal favorite characters too. And obviously for any big fans of Dumb Ways to Die would probably know that the snake bite in the eye is a reminiscent to Mishap, who if we remember had a pet snake who bit him in the eye. And although not in the game, in the actual music video he falls backwards, which is the same thing that happens to Stupa as well. In addition to that, when the minigame was initially released alongside the new update, I wouldn't have it at number 1 initially because at the time, the fail sequence is actually much shorter than it was before, because back then, it would just play out as the snake biting Stupa's eye, and that would just be it. Which scene is initially, I was very underwhelmed by that because the scene didn't feel as good as it could have been because of how short it played out. But at some point years later, when the games would update again, the developers extended the scene, and now this is how it plays out, which has propelled it to the top of the ranking. And that's what makes everything about this minigame fail so unique. So because of all of this, and how interesting it was in context, I have to list this as the best fail from Dumb Ways to Die 2. And so here's my list of my top 10 favorite Dumb Ways to Die 2 fails. Feel free to share what your top 10 favorite fails from this game is. So with all that, I thank you all tuning in for this ranking of Dumb Ways to Die 2 fails. Now before I head off, I can say I'm also planning to do other sort of rankings with other video games that I played. So stay tuned from those. And with that, I'll see you all in another video.